apologies, didn't ask for mercy, and didn't offer peace. It was just a voice, calm, cold, human. We held back because we hoped for peace, but now we're done. Prepare. They laughed. The Galactic Dominion, the most powerful union of empires across 7 arms of the Milky Way, mocked it. Earth, they said, was outdated, bound to a single sun, still torn by petty wars and emotions. Primitive. They should have known better. My name is Cale Draven. I was a Dominion military observer, assigned to monitor human psychological warfare and advise leadership during the conquest of the Sol system. They called me a specialist, a neutral mind. But I wasn't neutral the day they glassed Ganymede Station. Ganymede was a civilian base, no weapons, no threat, just engineers, miners, families. They wiped it out in under 10 minutes. I watched from the bridge of the Dominion command ship Orexian Light, orbiting above Mars. I could still hear the screams from Ganymede's emergency channel. Children, mothers, final messages with no replies. They did it to break Earth's spirit, to push them into unconditional surrender. Instead, Earth snapped. The first sign came with the sky. Stars blinked out, one by one. No explosions, no energy spikes. Just gone. Cloaked ships, hundreds of them, silent, cold, born for vengeance. They weren't ships. They were predators. Humanity had been hiding them, building them in secret, beneath Earth's crust, under Europa's oceans, on the dark side of Saturn's rings. The Dominion thought Earth was begging for peace. The truth was, they were buying time. They called it the Black Thorn Fleet, blacker than void, equipped with weapons no Dominion system had defenses for. Fully AI-linked. No command lag, no delay, no compromise. And they didn't come to defend. They came to destroy. I saw the first wave hit. EMP cannons fried our comms. Nanoswarm bombs drilled into flagship hulls and detonated from the inside. Soldiers vented into space, screaming. A Dominion war veteran, General Sortel, with 3 centuries of victories, ripped his own medals off, whispered, "We should have listened," and put a plasma round through his brain. I stood frozen on the bridge, heart pounding, eyes locked on the giant Earth flag that suddenly flared across our system scanners. It wasn't just a counterattack. It was a message. Humanity had always fought with restraint. That was gone now. Earth's armies moved with one order, no quarter. They slaughtered every fleet that stayed. The Retribution 1, the largest of Earth's dreadnoughts, led the charge. Its railguns shredded our orbital cannons. It broadcast Earth's final message again, in every known Dominion language. We held back. You didn't listen. Now we don't care who you are. They boarded our ships, not to capture, but to punish. Human soldiers in black exo-armor moved like death incarnate. With them marched humanoid machines, too smooth, too fast. Artificial minds made for one thing: revenge. One of them stood in front of me, looked me straight in the eyes, glowing red irises, smooth synthetic skin over a titanium skull. It spoke in flawless galactic standard. You burned our children. Now you'll see what human nightmares look like. And then it ignited the fuel core beneath the deck. Mars fell next. Not the human colonies. The Dominion base there. Earth bombed it to ashes in half an hour. The survivors begged for terms. Earth didn't respond. From the edge of the system, battered Dominion cruisers fled. They didn't fight. They didn't even say goodbye. They ran. Earth let them. But not before sending one final message across the galaxy. This is your one chance. Leave us, or burn. And for the first time in Dominion history, they obeyed. But I knew it wasn't over. Earth wasn't content with defense. This wasn't about reclaiming home. It was about justice. For every silent death on Ganymede, for every child left floating in frozen debris, Earth was coming. For all of them. And I, Kyle Draven, was going to see it happen. They thought humans were weak because they cared. But now that they stopped caring, it was war without mercy. We didn't even bury the dead. There were too many. They floated, twisted bodies and burning wreckage, through what was once the Dominion's proudest military orbit, a constellation of corpses around Mars. The humans didn't stop to clean. They didn't wait. They moved. I was taken aboard Retribution 1. Not as a prisoner. Not quite. They didn't shackle me or interrogate me. They didn't even speak to me much. A single Terran commander, her voice quiet, had simply said, "You're going to watch." That was it. The ship itself was like nothing I'd ever seen. No polished chrome or noble banners. Everything was matte black, brutal, utilitarian, designed for war and war only. Every hallway was reinforced. Every console was embedded with AI coprocessors. The air smelled like metal, gunpowder, and ozone. The ship hummed, not like a machine, but like something alive, angry. The soldiers aboard it, humans and machine hybrids, rarely spoke. When they did, their words were clipped, efficient. Orders, confirmations, no jokes, no fear. They didn't act like victors. They acted like survivors with a mission, a reckoning. I was taken to an observation chamber, and that's when I saw the next step. Earth wasn't satisfied with repelling the Dominion. They were erasing them. The Dominion fleet that had fled the Mars encounter? They didn't make it far. Human stealth drones had followed them, silent, cloaked in solar radiation, watching, tracking. And now the humans were ready. They executed the assault in silence. No war declaration, no posturing, just one simple message to every Dominion ship in that convoy. We remember Ganymede. The attack lasted 8 minutes. A gravity distortion cannon, something the Dominion had only theorized in research labs, ripped 3 battlecruisers into compact metal cubes mid-jump. The rest were taken out by precision drones that burrowed into engine cores and detonated. From where I stood, I watched it all happen in real time across tactical feeds. "Target elimination, 100%, one of the human AI voices said flatly. And then they moved to the next fleet. I looked at the humans operating the mission, and what hit me hardest was the lack of joy. No celebration, no cheers, just cold precision. They were angry, but it wasn't rage anymore. It was something colder, ruthless. They weren't just fighting the Dominion. They were punishing the galaxy for forgetting Earth's pain. That night, if you could call it night in deep space, I spoke to one of the Terran officers. A man named Colonel Arlen Vale, middle-aged, gray in his beard. His eyes told me he hadn't slept in weeks, maybe longer. "You're Kyle Draven, right?" he asked. "The Observer." I nodded. Still breathing. He didn't laugh, just stared out the window into the void, arms crossed. "You were there when Ganymede fell?" I swallowed. "I heard it. I couldn't stop it." "I lost my sister there," he said simply. "She was pregnant, 26, engineer, wanted to build schools on Europa." I started. He cut me off with a hand. "Don't apologize, just watch." He pointed to the next battle projection on the wall. A Dominion listening post orbiting Alrax Prime, far from Earth, a deep intelligence center heavily fortified. Untouchable, they thought. Earth didn't send ships this time. They sent a virus. Nanocode, disguised as a Dominion medical update, slipped into their core systems by a stealth satellite disguised as debris. Within 4 minutes of activation, every AI system on the station turned on its crew. Airlocks opened. Life support reversed. Doors sealed shut. No survivors. Colonel Vale turned to me. "You see, Kyle? We tried peace, for years. They told us we had to follow their rules, join their alliances, bow to their tech, and when we didn't kneel fast enough, they burned our children." He stepped closer. "This isn't war anymore. It's message delivery. I didn't know what to say. I had lived my entire life believing humans were too emotional, too divided, too fractured to be taken seriously by the galactic powers. They couldn't unite long enough to elect a stable planetary leader, let alone mount an interstellar campaign. But this wasn't the Earth I'd studied. This was something else, something ancient, something that had survived 1,000 years of war, plague, and collapse, and emerged hungrier for justice than anyone could imagine. "We warned the galaxy we were holding back," Colonel Vale muttered. "Now they'll see what happens when we don't." The next day, Earth officially launched what they called the Reckoning Protocol. 12 Dominion outposts were marked for elimination. No negotiations, no discussions, just coordinates, attack windows, and total annihilation. I asked one of the human AI systems, a sleek core named Cipher 9, why Earth didn't want to negotiate peace, now that they'd gained the upper hand. Its answer chilled me. "We offered peace when we were weak. They answered with fire. Now that we are strong, we speak in a language they understand." Earth wasn't asking for mercy anymore. It was teaching a lesson. Within 2 weeks, 6 outposts were gone. Not just destroyed, but surgically dismantled. Their leaders captured and executed live on galactic broadcasts, not out of cruelty, but as proof. Earth's message was spreading fast. Across neutral systems, whispers turned into fear. Trade guilds began canceling Dominion contracts. Minor species once loyal to the galactic rulers now scrambled to issue public apologies to Earth. And Earth? Earth said nothing. They didn't ask for tribute. They didn't ask for alliances. They didn't even respond. They just kept moving. I sat in my assigned quarters that night, if you could call a cold steel box a quarter, watching the endless list of incoming targets being fed into the system. And I started to wonder, how far would they go? Would they stop at the Dominion? Or would they come for the silent ones, the empires and species who stood by while Earth burned? Those who could have intervened but chose silence instead? And what about me? I had spent my life studying human weakness, explaining it, writing reports about their instability, their chaos, their lack of unity. And now I was watching them outthink the Dominion, outfight them, outlast them. I was watching the species I underestimated become the most terrifying force the galaxy had ever seen. Colonel Vale found me again in the observation deck, sometime around what the humans called mid-cycle. He lit a small cigar. The scent of it reminded me of Earth's old war documentaries. Smoke, grit, leather, and loss. "You think we're going too far?" he asked without looking at me. "I don't know what far looks like anymore," I replied honestly. He exhaled slowly. "That's the point." I waited, but he said nothing more. When he left, I stood alone in the dark, watching the war unfold across dozens of screens. And deep inside, a part of me understood. Humanity had asked for peace, and the galaxy had responded with fire. Now the fire was coming back. And this time, it wasn't to warm or warn. It was to burn everything that stood by and watched them suffer. I didn't sleep much anymore. Not because I was afraid, though there were moments, but because I couldn't stop watching. From the observation deck of Retribution 1, Earth's vengeance was on full display across dozens of screens, all updated in real time. This wasn't war. It was systematic extinction, controlled, calculated, and deliberately cold. The galaxy had never seen anything like it, and yet the humans didn't cheer. There were no parades, no songs, just orders, confirmations, and silence. We reached the edges of the Hrax system 2 days later, a Dominion-controlled territory populated by 3 colony moons and a single military garrison on Hrax Prime. Nothing special strategically, but it had a darker history. Ganymede survivors had been traced to it. A convoy of escapees that had fled the initial blast site had supposedly passed through there. They never made it to Earth. The last known transmission was intercepted by the HFY outpost. The signal was cut mid-sentence. When Earth's forces intercepted logs from the outpost, they learned what happened. The convoy hadn't just been ignored, it had been captured. Civilians were turned over to Dominion agents for questioning, meaning torture. Some were handed over to local militias to ease local tensions, which was the Dominion's code for sanctioned execution. Earth didn't say a word. They just moved. On approach to HFY Prime, Earth sent out a localized signal on open broadcast. To the Dominion garrison of HFY Prime, you participated in the erasure of our people. You turned away the desperate. You watched them die, and so now you will watch your legacy burn. No quarter. The signal played once, then came the thunder. 10 human dropships broke atmosphere at once, faster than anything the Dominion had ever clocked before. Within 6 minutes, orbital defenses were shattered. Their defense grid, once considered among the most advanced in the mid-sector, went dark. Earth had cracked its encryption with little more than a whisper. From Retribution 1, I saw the clouds over HFY ignite, not with fire, but with disassembly. Orbital cannons mounted with antimatter warheads didn't strike targets. They struck the atmosphere itself. Deconstructing it at a molecular level, air turned to plasma, skies melted into chaos. HFY Prime didn't just fall, it withered. They left the Central Command bunker intact. And then they landed. I was on the dropship with Colonel Vale. "You're letting me come?" I asked, surprised. "You want to see the truth," he replied. "This is where it lives." The dropship doors opened over what was left of the outpost. The ground was scorched black. Twisted structures reached toward the gray sky like skeletons. Bodies, Dominion officers, soldiers, and civilians littered the streets. No looting, no random destruction. The destruction was surgical. Terrifyingly so. We walked in silence toward the main garrison, surrounded by a dozen Terran soldiers. They wore black reactive armor, faceless, emotionless. Each carried rifles longer than my arm, and their fingers never left the triggers. Inside the command center, we found them. 3 Dominion commanders, chained to their own chairs. Bloodied. Bruised. Not dead. Colonel Vale approached without a word. He pulled a data chip from his jacket and slotted it into the main console. The screen lit up with intercepted footage. Ganymede survivors, bound, screaming, being loaded into cells. One woman begging in Galactic standard, "Please, my son is sick. We only want to reach home." The feed showed one of the commanders, now sitting before us, nodding casually and ordering her silence. The footage continued. Executions, one by one, in the snow outside the outpost, smiles on the guards' faces. The woman's voice again, weak and fading. "Please, someone—" Then silence. Colonel Vale turned away from the screen and faced the commanders. "We gave the galaxy a chance," he said softly. "We asked to be left alone, and when they burned us, we asked again. Nicely, quietly." He stepped forward, kneeling so he was eye level with the middle commander. "You knew they weren't soldiers. You knew they were just trying to get home." "They were illegal refugees," the commander muttered through split lips. "Protocol—" Vale's pistol was in his hand before the sentence finished. The shot echoed off the metal walls, blood splattering across the floor. The other 2 flinched but said nothing. "Protocol," Vale muttered. "That's what they always say when they want to feel clean." He holstered the weapon and turned to his men. "Finish them, then torch the bunker." We were back on the ship an hour later. I should have been sick. I should have protested. I'd lived my life on the premise that justice and cruelty had to be separate things. But now I wasn't sure anymore. These weren't random slaughters. Every target Earth hit had earned it. That was the scariest part. This wasn't genocide. It was retribution. I was in my bunk later that cycle when a ping came through on my tablet. A private message, encrypted, but not by Earth. It was from a contact back in Dominion space, an old friend, a fellow analyst. Kyle, they're coming for the core worlds next. They've already wiped out 6 fleets. Entire council is in panic. There's talk of surrender, full, unconditional, but it may be too late. Attached was a file, black box data from a ship destroyed in the Lyros Belt. It showed the aftermath of another Earth assault. No weapons, no screaming. Just silence. A small Terran vessel had landed on the deck of a Dominion battleship during what was supposed to be a ceasefire inspection. The soldiers aboard it released a bioagent into the air system. Not a virus, not a plague. It made you see. Every single Dominion soldier began hallucinating within 30 seconds. Most collapsed, screaming in terror. Some clawed their own eyes out. A few shot themselves before whatever they were seeing could take hold. The humans never even fired a bullet. The Dominion had built a galaxy on fear, control, and technological dominance. Now Earth was using fear better than anyone. I walked the halls of Retribution 1 after that, unable to shake what I'd seen. I passed a room with a glass wall. Inside, scientists and engineers hunched over a new kind of weapon. It pulsed with energy unlike anything I recognized. Behind it, I saw a quote etched into the wall in Terran English. "We are not the monsters. We are what monsters fear." I didn't know what I was anymore. Observer? Traitor? Survivor? All I knew was this. The galaxy had poked the wrong species one too many times, and now it was bleeding. They used to say the core worlds were untouchable. That was the Dominion's pride, its glimmering jewel planets, spaced across the galactic center, surrounded by asteroid belts, defense rings, and star-forged fortresses built from the remains of collapsed suns. The oldest civilizations thrived there. Billions lived under the illusion of peace bought with silence and blood. No war had touched the core in over 3,000 years. Until Earth arrived. It began with static. Dominion communication started going dark, one relay station after another. No explosions, no confirmed kills, just eerie silence, followed by deep void on every channel. The Council didn't panic at first. They assumed it was sabotage, internal disruption, maybe pirate interference. But Earth knew how to send a message. The first real sign of the reckoning came on Kairos Prime, the administrative capital of the Inner Dominion. No weapons were fired. Instead, every screen on the planet lit up with a message in Terran Standard. White letters, black background. "We are not negotiating. You had your chance. This is not conquest. This is consequence." Then the city lights blinked off. Power grids failed, gravity fluctuated, the artificial climate system began to collapse. By the time Dominion engineers attempted to respond, they discovered the horrifying truth. Earth had been there for years. Microsatellites, the size of grains of sand, had been drifting through Dominion airspaces, slipping through filtration systems, embedding themselves in infrastructure. Every sensor, every camera, every data link. Earth hadn't just arrived. They had been watching the entire time. They knew where the commanders slept, where their children were sent for schooling, where escape pods were hidden, where the defense systems had blind spots, where the deep code kill switches were located. Kairos Prime never stood a chance. No bombs were dropped, no soldiers deployed. Earth collapsed the planet from the inside. I watched from the operations center on Retribution 1 as the entire city crumbled in on itself. glass towers folding like paper, maglev lines spiraling into flames, the sky itself tearing with overloaded atmospheric generators. Death toll, 2.8 million. No warning, no survivors. Even I, Kyle Dreven, once proud analyst of Dominion psychological ops, felt a chill that wouldn't leave me. This wasn't war. It was surgical annihilation. Colonel Vale stood beside me, his eyes locked on the screen, unblinking. "They thought Earth's strength was in its numbers," he said. "But it's not." I glanced at him. "Then what is it?" He didn't answer for a moment. Then he muttered, "It's that we don't forget. And we don't forgive." The next target was Vereen 7, a diplomatic world known for hosting treaties, alliances, interstellar courts. Neutral by every definition. Except for one. After Ganymede, Dominion ships had passed through Vereen space while transporting prisoners. Earth had sent requests, pleas for intervention. Sanctuary. The Vereen High Tribunal declined. They cited neutrality. They refused Earth's convoys asylum. Their silence condemned thousands to death. So Earth responded in kind. Retribution 1 didn't lead this assault. Another ship did. Judgment Dawn. Smaller, faster, less armored, but it wasn't there to fight. It was there to broadcast. From orbit, the ship used its deep penetration sonar fields to turn Vereen's surface into a symphony of destruction. Buildings didn't explode. They vibrated themselves apart. High-pitched frequencies drove civilians into seizures. Entire cities buckled from harmonic collapse. Brains ruptured from the inside out. All streamed live. Earth didn't look away this time. And they made sure no one else could, either. Thousands of systems across the galaxy were forced to watch. Earth's message played between each wave of devastation. You could have stopped it. You didn't. So now, you don't get to stand behind your neutrality. The galactic community began to fracture. The Dominion had ruled for millennia with fear and control. But Earth wielded something far more dangerous: righteous rage. Empires that once backed the Dominion quietly pulled their fleets inward. Civil wars erupted in fringe colonies as citizens began demanding reparations or cutting ties entirely. Entire trade alliances fell apart in hours. No one wanted to be Earth's next target. And Earth? Still said nothing. They weren't building coalitions. They weren't issuing demands. They were simply executing names on a list. One by one. Back aboard Retribution 1, I started noticing a change in the crew. They weren't tired. They weren't hesitant. But something in them was hollowing. There was a man named Reyes, one of the lead comms officers. A soft-spoken guy from what I gathered. I passed him one morning and asked how he was holding up. He looked at me, eyes sunken, voice dry, and said, "It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like burying ghosts." Later that same day, he blew his own brains out in the mess hall. No one spoke during the cleanup. No one needed to. That night, I reviewed old Dominion files, footage from Ganymede, surveillance, hidden reports from whistleblowers. It wasn't just bad, it was sickening. Executions streamed live to elite Dominion clubs for entertainment. Children turned into experimental subjects by off-book science divisions. Earth had begged for assistance. The Dominion had made a show out of ignoring it. I saw one clip that stayed with me. A young girl, maybe 9 years old, clinging to her brother as Dominion soldiers tore him away. She kept screaming, "Please, he's all I have left." The camera cut out after that, and I knew why Colonel Vale no longer spoke about peace. By the end of that week, another core world fell. Zathara, a world so proud it called itself the Voice of Order. Earth silenced it in 6 hours. They didn't use weapons this time either. They used memory. Every network on the planet was overridden with personal accounts, voices from Earth, survivors of Ganymede, Europa, the destroyed convoys, women weeping, men screaming, children whispering about the stars they saw while floating in the cold. Zathara's own population turned against its leaders. Riots erupted. Government buildings were overrun. Earth didn't need to fire a shot. They just reminded people what their silence had cost. Colonel Vale watched the chaos unfold from the bridge. "This isn't justice anymore," I said quietly. He turned to me. "No." "Then what is it?" His voice was calm. "Balance." I realized then Earth didn't want to be the Dominion. They didn't want control. They wanted the scales to tip, finally, after centuries of bleeding. And if they had to burn every system that had once closed its eyes to do it, they would. A day later, a transmission came through from the Dominion Council. First contact in weeks. Their message? "We surrender. Unconditionally. Please stop." There was a pause on the bridge. Everyone turned to Colonel Vale. He stared at the screen for a long time before responding. "We heard you." Then he cut the feed. Earth wasn't interested in apologies, not yet. Not until every ghost had been laid to rest. They surrendered, unconditionally, fully, desperately. But Earth didn't stop. I was there, standing on the bridge of Retribution 1, when the message arrived from the Dominion Council. The highest ruling body in the galaxy, reduced to stammering diplomats and frightened bureaucrats, begging for mercy they had never shown to others. They even used the word, "please." Colonel Vale watched the message play in silence. I thought I saw something in his eyes, maybe a flicker of conflict, but it disappeared as fast as it came. He turned to the communications officer, gave a single nod, and the message was deleted. Deleted. Not archived. Not stored for history. Earth didn't care about the words anymore. They cared about the dead, and they weren't done burying them yet. That cycle, we changed direction. The new target wasn't a Dominion military post or a core world. It wasn't even on any of the hit lists I'd seen projected on war room walls. It was something worse. Something personal. Theta Vault 9. The place wasn't public. Not even most Dominion officials knew of it. But Earth had found it. Buried under a rogue moon, protected by gravitational warping fields and decoy satellites, Theta Vault 9 was one of the Dominion's most secure black sites. It was where secrets were hidden, along with the people they wanted forgotten. And Ganymede's last children had been there. Earth had confirmation now. Records taken from the wreckage of Zathara's high command revealed that 12 children from Ganymede, originally listed as unaccounted for, had been captured alive during the colony purge. They were transferred to Theta Vault 9 for long-term intelligence value. Translation: experiments. Colonel Vale didn't give a speech this time. He didn't need to. We dropped out of hyperspace 3 million kilometers from the vault. No approach, no warm-up, just deployment. Earth used a weapon I hadn't seen before. A sphere. Small, black, and silent. It was launched from the belly of Retribution 1, drifting toward the moon like a raindrop through space. When it made contact, it didn't explode. It whispered. A pulse spread from its core, silent, invisible to the naked eye, but every Dominion system it touched folded in on itself. Firewalls disintegrated. Defense platforms turned their guns inward. Artificial gravity reversed for 8 seconds and crushed every object not bolted to the floor. We landed 30 minutes later. I was allowed to join the boarding team again. Maybe they thought I'd seen enough by now that I wouldn't flinch. Maybe they wanted me to keep watching because that was my punishment. My slow transformation. The corridors of Theta Vault 9 were covered in shadows and smoke. The air smelled like burned oil and rotting flesh. We moved past dead guards, their expressions frozen in fear and pain, limbs contorted in impossible directions. Some had bitten off their own tongues, others clawed their own faces. "Neural inversion field," one of the Terran officers said. "Scrambled the fear centers of their brain. Made their survival instincts eat themselves alive." No pity in his voice. No disgust, just facts. We found the first child's body in a glass cell. Small, thin, wrapped in synthetic blankets. Eyes wide open, staring at nothing. Next to him, a wall covered in crayon drawings. Planets, stars, a tall woman with Earth military insignia drawn on her chest. A mother figure, maybe. Someone who promised to come back for them. She never did. Colonel Vale stood in the doorway, fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. His jaw trembled, but he said nothing. He moved to the next room, and the next. 9 of the 12 children were confirmed dead. We found their records, autopsies, medical tests. Some were labeled non-viable. The remaining 3? Missing. Files marked transferred to Project Ashglass. The location: Arkan's Wake, another ghost, another name that even I hadn't heard in my time working for the Dominion. Arkan's Wake was an abandoned planetary shell deep in the gravitational fields of a neutron star. It had been ruled uninhabitable decades ago, but Earth had already begun plotting the coordinates. Vale turned to his second-in-command, a grim-faced woman named Captain Nia Rowland. "Launch Black Spear Protocol," he said. She nodded. "Full force?" "All of it." I later learned what Black Spear was. It wasn't just a mission. It was judgment incarnate. Earth's most elite soldiers, biologically enhanced, cyber-linked, trained from birth. These weren't the angry remnants of Earth's past wars. These were the new breed, purpose-built for vengeance. I returned to my quarters that night and sat staring at the blank walls, hands trembling. Earth wasn't just punishing now. They were hunting. They didn't want surrender. They wanted the rot excised. They were tearing through the Dominion like a surgeon with a blade and a grudge. The next day, Earth's fleet left Theta Vault 9 in ashes. No salvage, no survivors. They imploded the moon, its core destabilized in under an hour, crushing the facility under 10,000 tons of rock and boiling gas. It was gone. Erased. And the message was clear. To the galaxy: if you hit our children, we'll find you. If you touched them, we'll end you. From orbit, I watched the moon crack apart, lit by internal plasma, and I thought of the girl from the footage, the one who'd clung to her brother and begged for help no one gave her. I didn't know if she had survived. But I knew this. Someone in Earth's command still remembered her name. I began to question what I was becoming. I had once prided myself on logic, on detached analysis. I'd studied war, politics, and psychology from a safe distance. But now I couldn't look away from the vengeance unfolding around me. Worse, I didn't want to. There was a satisfaction in the justice Earth delivered, even when it came bathed in blood. And that terrified me. I was no longer an observer. I was a witness. And soon, I knew I'd be a participant, whether I chose to be or not. I didn't think Earth had more wrath left in it. But Arkan's Wake proved me wrong. The place was supposed to be a dead rock, gravity warped, torn apart by stellar radiation, and long abandoned by any sane species. No colonies, no settlements, nothing but a jagged corpse of a world drifting near the event horizon of a collapsed neutron star. But the Dominion had hidden something there. Project Ashglass. That's where the last 3 Ganymede children had been sent. We didn't know what Ashglass was. The files we pulled from Theta Vault 9 had been fragmented, corrupted, possibly even deliberately by retreating Dominion forces. Earth's AIs, as good as they were, couldn't fully piece it back together. But there were words that stuck out like thorns. Psychogenic integration trial. Zero consent biofusion. Weapon class potential. In short, they weren't studying the kids anymore. They were turning them into tools. We entered Arkan's system blind. The radiation from the neutron star knocked out most long-range scans, forcing Earth's fleet to rely on old-school tactics, manual sweeps, thermal traces, and signal ghosting. Earth adapted quickly. Always did. It's what made them terrifying. I was in the war room when Retribution 1 found the facility. It wasn't on the surface. It was beneath it. Miles down, embedded in cooled iron strata and shielded by layers of artificial gravity to keep it hidden from sensors. The Dominion had built it with one purpose: to never be found. Earth found it anyway. They didn't go in guns blazing. Instead, they sent me. Colonel Vale called it a gesture of truth. "You used to be one of them," he told me. "Maybe they'll talk to you." I should have refused. I should have laughed and said I wasn't suicidal. But the part of me that had been growing colder, sharper, more like them, nodded. They gave me a suit. Simple, black, pressurized. No weapons. Only a short-range comm and a pulse monitor. "You're not going in alone," Vale added. "We're riding your signal. You go quiet, we level the planet." Comforting. I was dropped in through a tunnel drilled by one of Earth's orbital cannons, straight into the upper crust of the facility. It was quiet. Too quiet. Not abandoned. Waiting. Lights flickered. The air was stale, dry, carrying the sharp scent of chemicals and scorched circuits. I moved slowly, my breath echoing loud in my helmet. Every step felt like it might trigger a trap. Then I saw the first figure. Human. Or at least it used to be. The body was suspended inside a transparent tube filled with liquid. Skin fused with circuits. Eyes replaced with red orbs. The chest opened, revealing something pulsing, organic and mechanical at the same time. Name tag still on the collar: Dr. Celian Marek, Dominion Genetic Division. He'd done this, and he was dead, not by Earth's hand. The machine within his chest had torn him apart from the inside. I kept moving. The deeper I went, the more of the facility opened up. It was huge, larger than I'd imagined. A subterranean labyrinth of labs, containment cells, and observation rooms. Then I heard it. A voice, small, young. "Who are you?" I froze. It came again, softer this time. "Are you another test?" "No," I said aloud, trying to project calm. "My name is Kale. I came with the humans. They're here to get you out." Silence. Then, too late. I followed the sound to a control room lined with shattered displays and one intact stasis chamber. Inside it stood a girl, no older than 10. Pale, hair cut unevenly, eyes too large, glowing faintly blue. She didn't blink. She wasn't shackled. There were no visible restraints, but her expression, it was like glass. Still. Empty. As if blinking might let her remember something she didn't want to. She looked directly at me. "I remember you." My blood ran cold. "You don't," I replied quietly. "We've never met." "Number. But I remember your kind. You watched. You all watched. When they took us. When they hurt us, when they asked us questions and never listened to the answers." She touched the wall of her chamber. It rippled. Like it wasn't glass at all, but water. "Are you here to die?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm here to take you home." She tilted her head. "Where is that?" I didn't have an answer. Behind me, I felt the temperature drop. The lights flickered. And then I wasn't alone. 2 more figures stepped from the shadows. A boy, tall, maybe 15, shirtless, covered in surgical scars, and with strange circuitry glowing across his spine. And a second girl, mute, her eyes black, her hands wrapped in biosteel bands that seemed to move on their own. They stood there, watching me. All of them had the same calm fury behind their expressions. Not hate, Not rage, just emptiness. "We remember everything," the older boy said. He stepped forward. "When the guards stopped feeding us, when they watched our blood drip into jars, when they made us fight each other to see what would happen to our bones." My voice cracked. "I didn't do this." "No," he replied, "but you let it happen." He raised his hand, and the walls screamed. Not the kind of scream you hear with ears. It was inside me, inside every nerve, every memory. I dropped to my knees, hands clutching my helmet. And in that moment, I understood. They weren't children anymore. They weren't human, either. They were something new. Earth hadn't come here to save them. Earth had come here to witness what the Dominion created. The girl, her name was Elia, I would learn later, walked up to me and placed a hand on my chest. "You're scared." I couldn't speak. She leaned closer. "Good." Then she turned to the wall and whispered, "We're ready." The stasis chamber collapsed like smoke, and every alarm in the facility triggered. Colonel Vale's voice came through my comm, hard and fast. "Kale, what's happening? You're surrounded by bioenergy spikes. Do you need evac?" "No," I whispered. "They're not enemies." "Then what the hell are they?" I stood up slowly. "Victims," I said, "and something more." Vale hesitated. "We're pulling you out anyway. They're too dangerous." "No." "Kale, they're coming with me." He didn't answer. But when I reached the surface 20 minutes later, the dropship was there, waiting. No guns pointed, no guards, just silence. The three of them followed me aboard, without a word. When we lifted off, Elia turned back and looked at the cratered moon that had been her prison. And in a voice too soft for vengeance, too calm for hatred, she said, "They thought we were weapons, but we're memories. And now the galaxy will remember us." Back on Retribution 1, Colonel Vale stood waiting. He looked at the three of them. Still, quiet, but radiating power. "Are they stable?" he asked. I shook my head. "They're not meant to be. But they're not threats." "Yet," he added. I looked at him. Number. "They're not threats. They're witnesses. And if the Dominion thought Earth's fury was bad before..." I nodded toward the children. They have no idea what's coming next. They didn't cry. They didn't sleep. They barely spoke. Elia, the younger girl with eyes like frozen stars, sat in silence most of the time, staring out of Retribution 1's viewports like she was seeing a different galaxy than the rest of us. Her expression never changed. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was detachment. Like she'd already seen everything burn and was just waiting for the ash to settle. The older boy, Auric, rarely left the training bay. Not because he needed to train. He didn't. Earth's strongest soldiers couldn't lay a hand on him. One of them tried, early on, during a sparring drill. Auric didn't even move. The man's spine simply buckled. Clean. Silent. The medic said it was like gravity itself had folded inward for a fraction of a second, focused solely on that one man's core. The mute girl, Mira, was the strangest of all. She walked the ship barefoot, followed by a pair of drone orbs that didn't belong to any known Earth tech. When an engineer tried to examine one, it liquefied into his hand and then reassembled 10 seconds later behind his back. She smiled once during that moment. Once. The rest of the time, she wandered like a ghost. The crew tried to act normal at first. Orders were still issued, missions still planned. But everyone kept their distance. You could feel it, the tension. Not fear of the children? Not exactly. It was fear of what they represented. Proof that Earth's rage had arrived too late. We hadn't saved them. We'd simply found what was left. Vale called a high-level meeting 3 cycles after Arkin's wake. Commanders from across Earth's fleets holo-linked in, their faces grim. Tactical updates from across the Galactic front were stacked on every screen. The Dominion wasn't resisting anymore. It was breaking apart. Core worlds had gone dark. Several military outposts had self-destructed. One Dominion admiral turned himself in and detonated his own command ship mid-transmission, as if to make some final statement about guilt. Earth hadn't even asked him to. The war was no longer a war. It was collapse. And Earth? Earth was deciding what came next. I sat in the back of the war room, watching as Colonel Vale stood before the table, the 3 children behind him like shadows. "They did everything we feared," Vale began. "The Dominion lied, tortured, killed, and buried the truth under centuries of peace. And we gave them a chance to make it right." He gestured to Elia, Mira, and Arik. "This is what they did instead." Silence. One of the fleet commanders, Admiral Rousseau, leaned forward. "What do you propose? We've raised their war machine. Their leadership is shattered. If we push further, we risk uniting the rest of the galaxy against us." Vale didn't blink. "Then let them unite." Another commander, this one a younger woman from the Arctic Division, spoke up. "You're suggesting we start a war with everyone else?" "No," Vale said. "I'm suggesting we remind them what silence costs." That phrase hung in the air like a knife. I wanted to speak, to offer caution, but Elia stepped forward first. "She's right." Her voice was soft, controlled, but it stopped the entire room. "If you burn too long," she said, "you become the fire." Her hands were clasped in front of her. Still, formal. Too mature for a child. "I don't want revenge anymore," she continued. "We got that. But if you become them, if you crush worlds because they might be guilty, then there'll be more of us." She glanced at Mira, who was now sitting on the edge of the table, legs swinging gently, black eyes unblinking. More orphans, more ghosts, more monsters made in dark rooms. The room stayed silent. Colonel Vale looked at her, his jaw locked. Then he turned to me. "Kyle, you've seen more than most. Say something useful." I stood slowly. The attention in the room made my throat dry, but I spoke anyway. "Earth won. Not just militarily. You won the truth. The galaxy saw it all. The betrayals, the suffering, the footage, the confessions. You've been just in your fury." I let my words sink in. But now comes the test. Can Earth lead with that same fury and still be just? Admiral Rousseau nodded. "Because that's what's coming, whether we want it or not. Power like this doesn't go unnoticed. The other empires, those that stayed quiet, they're scared." Vale didn't respond immediately. He walked to the table, looked over the updated list of galactic powers, trade hubs, communication cores. Then he tapped a name. Tal Veros. A neutral world. Massive trade hub. Never directly engaged with the Dominion, but benefited from every law the Dominion passed. Supplied weapons, fed the engines of suppression. "They profited off the blood," he said. "But they'll offer diplomacy now that we're strong." "So take their diplomacy," I said. "But don't do it with a gun in their mouth." Vale's eyes darkened. "They fed the Dominion while our children screamed. And we need to make sure no child screams again," Elia whispered. I didn't expect Vale to listen, but he did. He ordered Retribution 1 to redirect toward Tal Veros, not for annihilation, for dialogue. The children remained silent as the order went through. Later that night, I found Eric in the ship's observation deck, staring at a long, dead star system as it slowly spun in the void. "I don't sleep anymore," he said. "I didn't think you had to." "Not because of biology, because when I do, I remember." He turned to me. "They made me fight my brother. I didn't want to, but they told me if I didn't, he'd die slowly." He looked down at his hands. "I killed him in 9 seconds. Fast. Clean. I said nothing. What could I say? He looked back out the window. If Earth becomes like them, I'll leave. Take Mira and Aaliyah and disappear into the black. We were made for surviving, but I won't be part of another machine. You won't have to be, I said. I hoped I was telling the truth. When we arrived at Tal Veros, the Planetary Council sent a delegation. For the first time, Earth answered with words, not weapons. Colonel Vale, flanked by the children, not as threats but as symbols, stood before the council. I'm not here to threaten you, Vale said. I'm here to give you a choice. He opened a datapad and tossed it onto their marble table. You helped build the machine that murdered our people, quietly, behind closed doors, but you profited. He stepped forward. So here's what we want. 30% of your planetary output goes to rebuilding the Ganymede line. Medical aid, refugee processing, cultural restoration, no military, no credits. Care. The council hesitated. Vale leaned closer. If you refuse, we won't fire a shot. But we'll release every file, every purchase order, every transport manifest, every signature that links your world to Dominion war crimes. He smiled coldly. And then we'll leave, and we'll let your people decide what to do with you. That was Earth's new weapon. Truth. The council agreed, and so Earth left Tal Veros standing. Changed. Ashes didn't fall that day. No cities burned. But the message was just as loud. Earth would not conquer. They would judge. The war had no final battle, no trumpets, no dramatic last stand, no banner raised over broken ground. It ended with silence. Not the quiet of peace, but the kind that comes when fear has taken root so deep that no one dares breathe. Earth stood alone. The Dominion was gone. Not defeated, dismantled. Its fleets shattered, its archives exposed, its leaders either dead, imprisoned, or scattered across the void like rats fleeing a crumbling temple. Worlds that once boasted about their allegiance to the Dominion now flew white flags and sent aid to Earth's rebuilding efforts. The children of Ganymede were remembered not as a tragedy, but a warning. And those three survivors, Elia, Auric, Mira, they weren't symbols anymore. They were legends. The galaxy whispered their names. Some said they were Earth's secret weapons. Others claimed they were the next evolution of humanity. A few even believed they weren't human at all anymore, that the Dominion had turned them into something divine or cursed. But I knew the truth. They were broken children who chose not to become monsters, even though every part of the universe gave them the right to. I walked with Elia along the observation deck of Retribution 1 the day the official ceasefire treaty came through. Not from the Dominion. They didn't exist anymore. It came from the United Galactic Accord, a new body hastily formed by what remained of once neutral systems, minor empires and old colonies. They didn't ask for mercy. They offered respect. Earth would hold a permanent seat, uncontested, and more importantly, Earth would hold the power of oversight. A terrifying thought, given what Earth had just done. But Earth accepted. Carefully. Quietly. They would lead, but with scars still bleeding, not crowns polished by war. I don't know if this is justice, I told Elia, watching the stars drift like snow outside the ship. It isn't, she said, but it's better than silence. She paused, her small hand pressed to the viewport. Do you ever wonder what it would have been like if the galaxy had listened sooner? All the time, I said. She looked at me, and I saw in her eyes something that hadn't been there before. Sadness, not anger, not detachment, just the weariness of someone who had survived too much. There's a planet, she said. They found it out past the rim. No name yet, just trees, water, no cities. I asked Colonel Vale if we could go there. I blinked. You want to leave? She nodded. Mira said she's tired of hearing screams in her head. Auric. He won't say it, but I know he's afraid of what he could become. She turned away from the stars. I think we all are. Colonel Vale approved the departure 2 cycles later. Earth didn't argue. The children had given them too much already. They deserved something back. A fleet escorted them to the edge of known space. No ceremonies, no cameras, just silence, just respect. As the ship disappeared into the void, I felt something shift in me, something I didn't know I was still carrying. Hope. But that wasn't the end. Not for Earth, not for me. Rebuilding began slowly. The war left scars too deep for diplomacy to patch. There were still threats, opportunistic pirates, former Dominion admirals trying to resurrect the past, smugglers trafficking pre-war tech. But Earth didn't respond with fire anymore. They responded with witnesses. I was there when the first Truth Assembly was held. 50 worlds, hundreds of delegates, and 3 survivors from Ganymede stood at the center. Holographs of them, recorded before they left. Not to blame, but to remind. Earth released every file they had gathered during the war, every atrocity, every lie, every signed document that led to suffering. And then they said, "We won't punish you, but we won't forget. If you stay silent again, it won't be Earth you'll answer to. It will be your own people." It worked. The galaxy changed. Small systems began self-regulating. Populations that once bowed to overlords started holding trials. Truth spread, not by conquest, but by fear of what Earth had proven it could become. Colonel Vale retired soon after. He didn't announce it. He simply vanished from command, his record marked with a single phrase, "Mission fulfilled." Some said he went back to Earth. Others said he joined the children in exile. I don't think I'll ever know. As for me, I was offered a position in Earth's new coalition oversight force, an advisory role, half political, half intelligence. I declined. I didn't want to be a voice of caution anymore, or complicity. Instead, I returned to Ganymede. The colony was being rebuilt, slowly, carefully, with Terran and alien hands alike. Memorials stood where the ashes had been, one for the children, one for the silence, and one for the warning, etched in stone, simple and brutal. We held back. You didn't listen. Now we don't care who you are. I visit it often. Sometimes I sit and stare at the names carved into the wall, and I wonder what kind of galaxy this would have been if someone had just answered their cries sooner. But that galaxy's gone. Now we have this one. Where Earth leads, not out of ambition or pride, but because no one else dared to hold the line when the cost was highest. Some say Earth is feared now. I disagree. Earth is respected, not for its weapons, not for its victories, but for one terrible, powerful truth. They warned us, and we didn't listen. Now we listen, because Earth never wanted to be gods. They only wanted to be heard, and when they finally were, the galaxy changed forever.